The age-old argument, what is a better purchase, a house, a townhouse, or an apartment? I'm going to talk about this from a perspective of a buyer's agent. I've been in real estate for the last 2 decades, and I'll give you feedback on what I've seen perform the best. Now, a couple of caveats. This is purely focusing on Melbourne property, and this doesn't take into any consideration your budget or buying needs. Let's start with apartments. Now, apartments, pretty much everyone knows these haven't been great in Melbourne for the last 2 decades. A whole bunch of reasons, but generally speaking, it's a lot to do around the poor quality builds. The builders using wrong types of materials, flammable materials. High maintenance folds into high body corporate fees. High body corporate fees rolls into poor capital growth. And this has just kind of really made the whole real estate market in apartments really sluggish over the last 2 decades. Now, there are pockets where apartments have been fantastic investments and they've gone up like clockworks. And that is generally in the premium apartment market space. Also inner city suburbs with low rise apartments, the really old properties that have been kept really well by their owners and by their body corporate managers. A lot of these have a history of capital growth and been great performers. So why would you buy an apartment? Well, I think it's really for people that are looking for a lifestyle, that need to be close to work, and they want the locality of having an apartment in a CBD location or in and around the city. I wouldn't say apartments are a great investment unless you have a serious budget. So upwards of $1.2 million plus. There's some apartments that have really done some great things, but like I said, you really need to know what you're looking at and what kind of apartment historically performed well. So the next one is a kind of in between houses and an in between apartments. They have a little bit of land and they also have the features of a house and also the convenience of an apartment. And I'm talking about townhouses. Now, townhouses can be reasonably good investments in Melbourne. Once again, there's a whole bunch of caveats there in buying this kind of property because it can be complex. But generally speaking, townhouses that resemble a house generally does a lot better when it comes to ownership and capital growth. So things like a townhouse that is not sharing any walls, any roofs, any driveways, has its own backyard, own front yard. These are the kinds of townhouses that do really well. And generally, when a townhouse has all these features, it has a pretty large block of land. We're talking about over 300 square meters. Another caveat I would also put on that is you want to make sure a townhouse is in an inner city suburb, not in an outer suburb. Inner city suburbs have great amenities to support smaller blocks of land, and it gives a great lifestyle to anyone that can own a townhouse without being able to afford an actual house. And there's some great data to prove that historically, these kinds of townhouses have been fantastic investments. On the flip side, if you get a townhouse that's more like an apartment that sacrifices land, under 200 square meters in a townhouse is really a small, pokey townhouse that compromises things like natural light, space, shared driveways where you've got people constantly driving up and down in loud cars. You really have to be careful with this kind of purchase. Yes, townhouses are great investments if you're buying the right one. But if you have one that's really more like an apartment, one where you've sacrificed so many things, it no longer resembles a house anymore. It's definitely a lot more like an apartment space. These are the kinds of properties you probably want to stay away from because historically they haven't been great purchases and they have very sluggish to no capital growth for many of their buyers. Now, the last one is houses. These are the best investments historically, just based on the land value appreciating. When you kind of really look at troublesome townhouses that don't do well or apartments, the real problem with them is the land component. Usually the land component is so small, the fixtures and fittings in these properties depreciate to zero, hence why capital growth can be such a sluggish and slow thing in these properties. Whereas when you have a house, the land component is what saves you. It's what essentially goes up in value over the decades. Now, there's many cases where townhouses, a good quality townhouse in an inner city suburb, can outperform a outer suburb house. That's a really good compromise where rental yields can be higher with the inner city suburb townhouse. And it's a smarter property. It's a more efficient property to own when it comes to maintenance, repairs, renovations, and capital growth can still be really strong on a lot of townhouses if you're buying the right one. But ultimately, there's a lot more options with houses as well. I mean, you can always renovate a house, extend a house, you can build up ways, long ways. You can knock down a house, you can build multiple properties on a single dwelling if you buy the right kind of block of land. Sometimes you can even keep an existing dwelling and sneak a unit in the rear of something. So there's a lot of options when it comes to property and houses, and that's purely because you have that land component that blesses you with capital growth.